Shigare. Happy spring break, no shigare.
No shigare, no sugar,
No
no
sugar,
sugar, no
nista,
sugar,
no sugar,
mama.
mama.
Yeah.
Don't you know, pump it up. Is that what it is?
You got to pump it up. Don't you know, pump it up.
Got to pump it.
Okay.
It does flow nicely.
Yeah, it does.
Okay,
hello,
okay,
everyone.
okay. Sorry.
Okay. You know that song's like, what was that song
Yeah.
that we used to like jump around in the
Oh.
kitchen to? Is it
Oh
Kanye
my
song?
god, you just unlocked a
Unlocked.
memory.
I need to Google.
That was the weirdest. When a memory is unlocked, my wheels are literally turning.
Mm-hmm. Like we used to jump in the kitchen around
Yeah.
that song. Mom just texted me. I can't wait to get home and bake a chocolate loaf, cheddar cheese loaf, and something else.
I can hear her reading that.
Yeah.
I think
like-
Mom must look at sourdough all day.
No, literally she does. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to No Sugar with Everything Krause. Another day, another dollar.
Another day, another thought.
Another dollar. Another. I don't know. I was going to try and come up with something cooler, but my mind is blank.
Honestly, another day, another dollar sounds great to me.
And I am the worst at thinking of things on the spot.
So am I. I've recognized that
Like,
we do that often in this podcast.
When someone
we try
puts
to.
pressure on me, when someone puts pressure on me is like, last night we were watching a real estate show. Xander was like, what do you think the house, like the price of this house is going to be? And I was like, like could not think of a number. And he's like, really? You have no guesses? I ended up guessing. And he was like, oh wow, that was really close, because he had seen the episode.
Oh, was it?
It was 42 million and I guessed 40 million. So
Nice. So you're watching luxury
casual
homes?
4 million,
4 million.
40, excuse me, $42
Yeah.
million home. It was really cool.
Shit. I bet it was cool.
Buying Beverly Hills was the real estate show. Very not involved around real estate that much, but we all enjoyed. So that's fun.
That's good. That's good. It's a funny family show.
Yeah. We've realized that we've unlocked like this new side of Xander and these cheesy, stupid shows, because I think they're just so lighthearted that it really doesn't matter. Like we don't always need something intense to watch. And like by the end of the night, I just want to relax and take my mind off whatever I was thinking about during the day. So I think we all kind of are on that same page.
Yeah, like I bet he
And it's
loves the break and giggles that he gets from these weird shows that like you and Mom find
like
so
Love
much
is
enjoyment
Blind, The Bachelor, Buying Beverly Hills. Those are all three shows that I got us into.
in. Which I have to say, I would think is a difference that Emily made within him, Emily, his girlfriend, because not that it made him more like, oh, like I want to watch that stuff, because I don't believe that Emily may watch that stuff. I just think she does. She brought out a softer. Oh, she does.
Mm-hmm.
I think she has brought out a softer side within him to be like more understanding of women and being like, oh, like you want to watch these shows, Mom? Like, okay, let's watch them.
Yeah,
Because Xander would have never sat down and spent any minute on these shows. I feel like
I know.
At the beginning of this year.
I started watching The Bachelor and I was really behind. I wasn't gonna watch this season, and then when I went on The Bachelorette in QS, all those girls were watching it, so they were talking about it, and I was like, wait, should I watch this season? They were like, honestly, you should. It's really good. And it's funny watching it now because I'm like the same age as some of these girls that are on the show. So it's different than watching it when I was in high school and all these people were way older. Like,
so crazy.
Especially now with social media, I feel like you can relate to these girls even more. I don't know. So it was weird, but
It's like weird. You can like place yourself in that position, and that'd be weird.
And I started watching like all these episodes. I had like 6 episodes to binge watch, which was fun. And then Xander saw me watching it. And next thing you know, like he's sitting down on the couch watching. Dad's sitting down. Mom's sitting down. I'm like, all right, guess we're watching The Bachelor. Next thing I know, I'm pre-recording Monday night. We're watching it Tuesday.
No.
Yes.
Oh my
so
God.
Funny. I'm like,
That's
who
amazing.
knew? Literally, like I get home Monday night from teaching and I'm like rushing to go shower because he's like, Bachelor's on. Are we watching it tonight or should we just record? He's literally like waiting on the couch, ready to go.
Monday night highlight.
Yeah,
that's what it used to be for me. So I totally get it, Xander.
So speaking of, I guess Bachelor can kind of lead us into our topic.
Speaking of all of these loving shows, these love-filled shows, our topic today is what we previously mentioned. It's touching on dating in your 20s, but particularly on Kateri's perspective, just because I'm not dating in my 20s, and I think Kateri has a lot more knowledge and wisdom and experience after I'll let her share how long she's been in her relationship, but after the relationship that she's currently in, which not after, she is in. And I kind of just want to ask her some questions that are on my mind, some questions I may have about dating, and kind of guide this episode for the relatable person who may not be in the same position as Kateri. So
yeah, exactly what Isabelle said. I definitely have some experience. I'm not in any way, shape, or form a relationship expert, but I have been in a long-term relationship going on 2.5 years now. Been talking for 3 years pretty much, so it's a big chunk of time, and this was my first relationship, so I feel like I kind of have even more like advice to give, or like more things I've learned, because I haven't learned them in past relationships really. So I've learned a lot from this one. And exactly, I feel like the last time we touched on this topic, it was kind of almost like an overview, and it was from both of our perspectives and kind of like what we expect out of a relationship, things like that. And now maybe, like Isabel said, diving a little bit more into like, okay, what is someone who's not in a long-term relationship? What's something that you would maybe be like, oh, what's that like? Or what advice can you give on this? And these are my thoughts. And can you kind of guide me, or, you know, explain me how this stuff makes you feel when you're in a relationship? Because I think a lot of our listeners are in this age bracket, and I don't know if they're in relationships or not, but it could be helpful, even if you are in a long-term relationship, hearing someone else's perspective and advice on that.
Yeah, definitely setting you up for things to keep in mind if you do eventually get into a relationship this year or down the line.
But just prefacing the episode with like, I am not an expert, and these are only my thoughts and opinions on things, and I'm still learning and growing a lot. So like, some of the things I say could change in a year, but we're just going with where
I hope
I'm
they
at.
do, because that would mean that you grow. So I hope to hear a lot of different answers as well from like, I don't even remember what we talked about in the last dating episode, honestly.
That's why when I was like last episode, I was like, I honestly don't know what we talked about.
I have no idea what we talked about, but I'm curious to see, like, I'm gonna listen to that one and then this one and see what's changed within you from that year. I kind of want to start in a random spot just because it made me think of this question immediately, like while you were just talking. I forget it. Oh my god.
Really?
Yeah, I literally forget it. I can't believe that just happened.
Oh my God. Keeping this in.
Wait. What were you just talking about? It was a trigger word. So I guess I shouldn't restart this because I'm assuming you'll keep this in.
Majority of it.
Okay. So I'm not going to restart it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me get my thoughts together and rephrase this question for you, sis. What sparked in my head when you just gave that little introduction was, this is your first real relationship. And that to me is the most curious, like the thing I'm most curious about, because I've never really been in a serious relationship as well. And when I say like serious, I mean 3 years considering to be future partner. Like that's serious to me. Because you haven't had a serious relationship prior to this one, I just want to know, like, what was the hardest adjustment you had to make to jumping into this relationship after just not having one? Like, not having one, there's so much to know about a relationship. I imagine you didn't know so much in the beginning. So I just want you to speak on that.
Yeah. It was kind of weird for me because I remember, like, when I first started developing feelings for Tyler, I almost was like, don't get your hopes up. You know, like that was definitely my initial worry, was like, this could fizzle out. This could not be anything more than like a texting relationship, and almost kind of setting myself up to be okay with that if it ended. I was also in a position where I was leaving and moving to Florida sometime in the next like month or two when we first started talking. So kind of prefacing like myself, be like, okay, this could end when you move because you are leaving his area. Anyway, I think one of the hardest things for me was putting the pressure on myself, because I didn't feel like I knew a lot about being in a relationship. I was almost like, well, am I handling everything right? Like, I've never, almost using my lack of experience against me, instead of being like, it's okay that you don't know everything right now. Like, you're not supposed to know everything right now. And even if you were in a relationship before this, this is a completely new one. So you are starting fresh no matter what your situation is. But I feel like I use that against myself a lot, of like, well, you don't have the experience, so like, you just have to let it play out, or don't bring up this because maybe this is how relationships go. Little things like that. And it wasn't ever him making me feel like that. That was more so my own like insecurity that I had. And I will say though, you know, the beginning of a relationship, it is kind of fun. It's light and airy. So those thoughts didn't come up too much until like we could tell it was getting more serious and that it was heading in that direction. So the beginning, it also did just flow really nicely. Like there wasn't a lot of pressure of it. And as much as I was worried that like, who knows, maybe this could end, I would always say to myself, there isn't a day that I can see this ending at this current time. Like we're talking every day. Our conversations are great. You know, we would FaceTime at night and like FaceTime for long periods of time to like get to know each other because we couldn't hang out all the time. And I was like, why would this just end? You know, you have that like gut feeling of like, what would be the reasoning behind this ending? Because I can't see one in the near future.
If he wanted to, he would. Like that line is literally so accurate. If he wanted this relationship, then he would FaceTime you for long hours to get to know you. And if he didn't want it, then you wouldn't be having those.
Exactly. I remember even when I first moved to Naples, I was there for like a 2-week buffer period before I officially moved down there. So it was like 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, I want to say. So then when I came back from Thanksgiving and then went back right before Christmas, I remember Tyler, during that period when I was home, he had already booked a flight for like my first weekend there. That would have been my first weekend alone. And, you know, I kind of told myself that line of like, if he wanted to, he would. And clearly he wants to make this work. And he's already booked a flight to be with me on my first weekend. So I'm not alone, to hang out with me, like get to experience this new place with me together. So that was another thing of like indication of, okay, yeah, if he wanted to, he would. And that's honestly the line that I still use a lot in many situations being in a relationship.
I want
piece of advice to tell people.
Yeah, honestly, very wise of you, Kateri, for entering into your first relationship. I feel like that's kind of how everyone should think, because not that you scared yourself and didn't let yourself feel the emotions in the beginning. I think you logically prepped your mind for something, for a possible reality. Like the truth was that you didn't know if this relationship was going to work out, and you prepped yourself, and then you allowed yourself to kind of just take it and trust the signs and trust the relationship instead of doubting it and carrying over that anxiety. Whereas I feel like a lot of girls don't really have that logical aspect to it sometimes and think like, oh, this boy loves me, and or oh, this yeah, he likes me, like he's doing this, he's doing that. Like we need to be smart enough to recognize that sometimes these actions and these like low behavior and low value actions don't signify that the guy likes you or his feelings for you. It's so easy. And I'm vice versa. I'm just saying that that was really interesting to hear that you went in with that logical thought, because I think the same way. And you know, we prepare ourselves for any possible situation. I think that's what you need to do at the start of a relationship, because they don't owe you anything. They don't owe you a year with you. Like
exactly. Like they're not committed to you, fully committed to you in that moment. And you have to protect your heart a little bit. But like you said, I didn't bring that like protection into the, you know, new budding relationship as a way for me to get insecure or defensive or kind of, you know, be my own worst enemy and burn it down because I was so nervous that it would end. Like, it was only just a little bit on the back of my mind. And if you ask him, he'll say the same thing of like, he was worried maybe it wouldn't work out and like kept himself in that place too, just in case. So he was like, okay, if it did end, I was like, okay, I was a little bit prepared for that. Like I expected that a little bit, you know, I'm like, that's all right. It's not like that's a weird thing to say.
That's a great point too, is don't let it affect your own being, because you can become very insecure from that.
Yeah,
so exactly. Love that. Okay, so going off that, another concern that I have for when I do get in a relationship is my individuality, because I am a very individual person. I operate in my alone for the majority of my day. You know, like I do my workout, I do my walk, I do my classes, I do my work, and then I eat, like, and then I convene with my friends. I'm a very just alone type of person, and my fear with the relationship is, how am I going to keep this sense of self while also entering this relationship and like really becoming one with a person? Because it's not that I think I'm gonna like lose my full self. It's just when you do get serious and you enter a relationship that is hopefully marriage, you do have to become one. And I just wonder, like, for you, since this was a first relationship, was it hard? Like, how did you keep that individual sense of self while also having this boyfriend? Did being in Naples help that? Are you grateful for Naples for that reason? Like, expand on that.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on that a little bit with the Naples. I feel really grateful that I was moving not only I was moving away from home and living alone, so automatically I was going to be diving into a more independent lifestyle because I was moving away from home, and going through that in also while starting a relationship was like starting two new journeys for myself. And I feel like I made it very clear when I was in Naples and when I was, waking up in the morning and doing my morning routine, and when I wanted to be, doing some goal setting or journaling or reading at night, even if I was reading a fiction book. Like, I put my phone on do not disturb, and I think I made it very clear of like these are the times that I'm working on myself, and I just kind of want to chill with my own self. I get maybe like you're off work so we can talk, but this is important for me. And yes, I want to prioritize you, but in order to prioritize you in our relationship, I have to prioritize myself first. And I got to water me before I can water us. So I think the biggest thing in that is one, just be honest and like upfront. So there was a time I remember, this is so silly, but I was reading on the couch at night. I like put my phone on do not disturb, and I think I changed like my do not disturb to allow calls to come through. And I remember, how you can like hit notify someone anyway. He was texting me, and like of course I wasn't getting it, and then he hit like notify anyway, so my phone started like going crazy. And I was like a typical hormonal girl. I was like, what? I'm like, leave me alone, I'm reading. But then like once I calmed down a little bit, I just like called him and was like, I'm sorry, but that was like my time, and if I had my phone on do not disturb, it was just like a time for me to chill. So unless it's urgent, I don't want you to do that. And like that was that. It wasn't didn't cause like this giant argument, but it was almost explaining that I'm going to have my moments, and those are the moments that I need for myself in order to be sane and and feel like I still have my independence and individuality. So making things very clear. I don't think I'm 100% an expert in that area, but just looking back, like that's something I definitely did. And even now, I still have we don't live together, so it is easy to keep an individual life at this point. That's obviously a big factor of like when you live with someone. I can imagine maybe this is a little more challenging, but I can also imagine doing the same thing of like during this part of the day, this is what I'm going to do. I don't care what you do. You maybe go do your own thing. If you want to do a similar thing to me, that's fine, but I'm going to like keep this in my own bubble of like, this is my read, meditation, prayer time. And if you also want to do that, that's great, but like maybe do it in another room.
Yeah,
that's exactly. All right. You just have to communicate that. That's all that really is.
Did you know to communicate that though? Like or did you have to learn that, oh, you know what, he talked to me, like I've been talking to him so much, it's not making me feel good, and like really dive deep and figure that out? Or was it like an inherent, like, I don't like how much we're talking, like I need to say something?
A mix of both, because there's a part of me that in a lot of relationships, what I've learned about myself is if I don't fully feel like I have the words to communicate it effectively, I'll just hold it in because I don't want to offend or upset someone else, because my words, because my words weren't in order, and I was worried that I would word it wrong to come off worse than it actually, what I actually meant. Because a lot of the times, pretty much every time I will bring something to a relationship of like an area of concern or an area I want to work on, it all comes from such a good place, but how you word it can be either really good or really bad. So I feel like at first I was a little worried that it would come off as like, I don't want to talk to you, especially in the beginning. But I think once you have like the initial conversation of the importance around it, like I want to keep my individuality and still have this, and I don't want you to take offense to me not wanting to talk 24/7 or when we both have free time. Like if you have that initial conversation early on, it almost like sets that good foundation to know that one, you can have that open communication and he can do the same with you. So you're like letting him do it if he needs to say something to you as well. And I don't know, I think naturally I'm a person like I'm not going to push things under the rug, and I'm not going to hide how I truly feel. Like eventually it will come out. Maybe it won't come out immediately. Now I've gotten better at that, but I always knew like if it was going to eat at me alone, like I just needed to be like, I just need to talk to you about something, and then it would like blow out of me and just like spit it out like word vomit, literally.
And from what I feel, like when you do need to have a serious conversation, especially at the early stages, I mean, clearly I don't know. This is just what I assume is I feel like the hardest part about a new relationship is that you really do have to learn each other. Like you have to learn each other's dating styles. He has no idea if you want to be in constant communication or don't want to talk all day and just call at the end of the day. So that conversation is something that you don't really need to fear because, you know, he still needs to learn that about you. Like he had no idea that, you know, you maybe were reading and journaling and doing all that and like did not want to be interrupted. And I think that's just something to take away and keep in mind throughout your entirety of the relationship is just you're always going to be learning about one another, and the other person is not the same as you, so you can expect some differences and some bumps and some disagreements. I feel like that's just what I took away from that.
Yeah, I would kind of going off of that, maybe like another question here is one of the biggest things I've learned being in a relationship, learned about myself, like all kind of combined. Everyone always talks about like communication is so important, it's so key, and it really is. Like that line is truly so important. Like communication is key, but understanding that how you communicate might be different from the other person. So exactly like you said, you do have to kind of learn how that person likes to communicate, how they will communicate when it's, you know, when they have something they want to talk about, and also just like giving yourself the grace and the peace to be like, okay, it's not going to be perfect right away. Because I feel like one of the things I was worried about, like if we had any disagreements, and we didn't, honestly, like I don't remember the first time we had a disagreement, but I feel like it was like a good amount of time into it. But I remember after the first one, I was like, it almost felt like we needed that because I needed to learn like what it would be like if we got into a disagreement and what triggered that, what was going wrong that led to that. And pretty much 9 times out of 10, it was the lack of communication beforehand. So it all bubbled up and like came to a head. And then everything was like, okay, so if we had just communicated like a week ago, we would have been good. But because we both didn't, it led to a little bit of a tiff, a disagreement between us, and that like could have been avoided altogether. But at the same time, those are even important too, because then exactly pointed out the obvious to us, and that might not have been pointed out if we were like, oh, I don't want to argue, so I'm just not going to bring it up. You know, like that's one of the biggest things is like communication really is very, very important, and I'm still learning to this day communicating. And I think I said this in one of our podcasts for 2024, one of my biggest goals like in the relationship for this year is to be better about communicating my thoughts, my feelings, plans, anything down to like little details better, because if it's on my mind, just get it out. The more I hold it in, like the worse I feel, and that's not fair to me or him or our relationship. So that's like one of my biggest goals, and I feel like it's really been, I've really stuck to it, and I'm very proud of the growth I've had in that area, truly.
Because that's hard. That's really hard to do. I feel like that's good to note for every type of relationship too in life. Like not even just romantic ones, is what I've learned in every relationship with friends, with professors, with everything, is that a lack of communication leaves room for assumption, and assumptions will always be the worst of what your mind is thinking. So you are going to assume the worst of the situation and create all of this stress and angst within your mind, whereas if you just communicated it at the beginning, you wouldn't have had to guess and wonder. And that's like what normally forces me to express my thoughts right away, is I'm like, I don't have time to wonder and go down this rabbit hole of different possibilities. Like what if I just asked and got the answer right away? Like exactly. That's why I think it's so funny that we all dread communicating, because yes, it's so hard, but like the hardest things in life always give you the best rewards. It's so true to everything.
No, it really, you can relate it to every relationship that you have, and I feel like it has, you know, that goal I maybe made it for my personal intimate relationship, but it's affected other relationships that I've had, and like the mindset I have around certain situations of exactly what you just said. I don't have the time to like sit around and wonder and like question what the answer is going to be. I'm just going to go forward straight up and ask right now, because why waste time right now?
Kind of going off communication here, I have another question that I wonder if communication is the answer. I'm curious to what you'll say. But I feel like when you meet someone else, as we just said, like they are a different person. And there's going to be disagreements in your values and who you are, because you are not raised the same and you are different people. So like, how do you handle those disagreements with each other? How do you handle those differences if like you're different to the core in some aspects? Like I would expect that when you meet someone new. Is it communication that fixes it? Is there a fix? Like sometimes you just have to agree to disagree. Like I know I think about this all the time when I think about relationships, because I'm like, what am I gonna do if we're like foundationally not the same? And that's also really hard to achieve. So
I think, I said the biggest thing I've learned was about communication. The second biggest thing that I've learned is that you are not the same person. They are different from you. Like you said, they were raised differently. They're a completely different human, and it would be weird if you were completely the same and thought the exact same. So learning to adjust to that, at times it can still be hard for me. Like when there's something that comes up that maybe like I'll say something and he kind of has a different viewpoint on it, I'm like, my immediate reaction sometimes is I get defensive and I'm like, how could you see it another way, like other than my way? And that's not fair, because there's reasons behind his reasoning, just like there's reasons behind my reasoning. So yes, in those moments, it's, kind of about communicating, your reasons behind maybe what your response is, your answer, whatever it is that you're talking about. I do think being able to be really patient and understanding in those moments, because it can go really it can go a couple different ways. It can go down a rabbit hole of like just arguing and feeling like you're never going to come to an answer because you're both just so strong-willed on your side. Or two, you can almost let out your thoughts behind your point, let him let out his thoughts, and then table it for the time being, of not like pushing it under the rug and just not addressing it, of almost like, I know that this isn't something that's going to come to an answer right this second, because a lot of the times these like values or these disagreements we may have on that, it's very hypothetical, because we're not at that phase in our life. Like if we talk about our future home or where we're going to live, it's like, that's all hypothetical because we're not in that position right now. And I know it's important to have those conversations, but there's some things that aren't going to be answered until the time comes to answer them. So as long as you get out like the initial conversations and hearing where each person stands, so when you go into like make a decision, how it stands, and maybe where you can compromise and where you're not willing, you got to get out that like initial convo. So it's either like you go down and you fight and then you just blow up argument, you can table it, or in that moment you do see both sides and you're like, what, you're right, I think that your side is, that makes sense, I understand why you're like that, and maybe you won't ever agree with that, but like you can understand. So patience and understanding comes a lot with that as well, because you have to recognize that you are two different people, and that's okay. You're supposed to be, and you can learn a lot from someone else. You can learn a lot from how they were raised and their situations and how they view different parts of life. That's a fun thing. That can be really rewarding in a sense as well. You just have to be open to it. So another challenging thing for me was learning that and being able to be open, because my way of living and my way of thinking is not the only way, and it's not the perfect way. It doesn't necessarily make it the right way just because I like it, I don't know if that so like answered it fully, but
no, it did, because it's so interesting to me, because I'm a type of person who I think about when I meet the person I want to be with. I like, if you guys remember from the dating in 20s episode, I would always be like, oh, I have boxes, I have certain morals that need to be met, and I never really thought about what you just said, where it's like they're hypotheticals and some things you don't really have the answer to until you're in that situation, because it would be crazy of me to enter a relationship now and not pursue it because he wants to live in the location that I don't want to live in, unless it's like a real non-negotiable for you and for him. Like you can't really break up because of that. I'm realizing is like, what would I do in that situation? I would probably be like, I have no idea where I'm going to be in 5 years. Maybe I will want to live there. Like, that's the craziest part is what I'm realizing is that I can't have all these expectations and like things that need to be non-negotiable because I really don't know how I'm going to change within 5 years, within 10 years. Like, I could be in a completely different place. So that's super interesting.
No, yeah.
I don't
it's
know. Like that's just my take on it.
There are certain things that I believe you should be on the same page about. Like, faith is very important. Family, you know, like wanting a family, obviously very important things to be like on the same page about. And people will tell you like faith, finances, family, you know, there's certain things that you should cover before entering into a serious commitment with someone or entering like before you get married, essentially.
Yeah.
And I do agree with that. But like I kind of just said, some of those things will change. Like I just feel like even, oh, how many kids do you want? That even changed the longer we got into a relationship, you know, because you get to know someone a little more. Then you start thinking about your future together and you're like, okay, that answer has changed for me now. So arguing about it or bickering over who's right about wanting more kids or less kids in the beginning doesn't really make sense because that could change. Like, you know, you could start popping out kids and I might be like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And he might be like, I want more. And I might be like, I will. Like, you never know. It's just little things like that until you're in it, you really can't make a decision because it's not real life yet.
Okay, Kateri. So one of my biggest fears, I think, for relationships is I have not expectations. Like, maybe I do. Maybe these are expectations. I want you to tell me. But I feel like I have such this like idea of the type of guy that I want. And I'm really worried that it's actually making me a little bit more close-minded. Like, it's okay to have standards and expect to like a type of person that you want, but I'm almost worried that it's too strict because when I do meet someone that I may really click with, like if they don't check every single box of that ideal image in my head, I'm worried I'm gonna like freak myself out and think that they're not the one or I can't pursue this relationship. And like, did that happen at all within this relationship? Like, did you ever have to go through like realizing that you set too high of expectations and it or like, but then I think like, oh, is that standards? Like, I just don't know if it's standards or if it's too high expectations.
I think that still comes into play like to this day, and that is kind of like a personal thing, like a personal issue with me. The problem with expectations is that they really do rob you of the joy and peace that you can have. And there's even times, like, I'll set the stage. If I'm going to Tyler's apartment and in my mind I have these expectations of how our night is going to go. We're going to make dinner. I hope he buys me flowers. I hope dinner's like prepped when I get there. You know, I hope we have like open conversations and giggle and laugh. What any expectations that you will set in your mind for the night. If I get there and A, there's not flowers, or B, dinner hasn't even been started, however the night goes, if it's not exactly what I expected in my mind, I'm immediately let down and I hold it against him, even though he had no idea that like him not prepping the chicken or cutting the sweet potato was what I expected and what I wanted, and that upset me. Like in his mind, he has no idea. So it's almost like when you set expectations, you're allowing yourself to be let down. So I do think it's important to have standards. It's important to stand by what you believe in and what you expect from someone. But I look at it as like, okay, I expect you to treat me with respect. I expect you to value my time. I expect you to do this, this, and this as like a moral ground. But when you go dive into expectations of like, I expect you to always open my door and always make me dinner and always pay for everything and always buy me flowers every time you see me, that comes like a more of a, almost like a materials thing, or like you just want from someone. And that's where I think it gets tricky. That takes away from like standards, and it's more of like, if you don't communicate that, they might not do that, and then you're just let down by that person. If that, I don't know if I really worded that right.
That's really interesting. It almost seems like from what I'm gathering from that is that you have to be okay, which is so simple to me. Hearing you say that, it's so simple. Like, you have to be okay with the person not being 100% every day, because like there's maybe sometimes that he doesn't get you flowers because he had a terrible day at work and like that wasn't the first thing on his mind, and that's not a sin. I'm realizing right now is like if he didn't do that, that's okay. Or there may be times where he is in a bad mood where you get over because he had a terrible day and like you need to be his comfort zone. It may not be all happily and giggly like you said. So I just feel like understanding that, you know, you are people and like you can't have expectations for behavior in certain things because it's so, like they may just be having a bad day, or you know, they may not even know. Like something I feel like about guys, what I've learned just in friendships and like guys that I have pursued is that they really don't think like women at all. Like we expect them to truly read our mind, and like they do not, and they don't even try to read it. Ladies, let's just start at that. Like they don't even think that way, which is totally okay. It's like the masculine and alpha within them. It's just so funny that they don't have that like emotional side to understand that we want them to have flowers ready when we get there. Like they don't think like that. So if you want that, I almost wonder if that's something you just need to say. Like, hey, I love when you get me flowers. Like when I come over, it makes me so happy. Guarantee you the guy will do it.
Yeah. I've made that, like I said, how much I appreciate it, and pretty much every time I go over I have flowers. The only time I don't is if I'm like leaving for the weekend, so I'm not even gonna be there to enjoy the flowers, and or he doesn't go to the store before and like got home from work the same time I got there, right? Like not saying that so other people can compare the relationships to mine, but another thing going off of what you said is relationships are never like 100% and 100% from each person. There's a lot of times where maybe he can only give 20%, so I got to come up with the other 80 so that we can be 100 together. And that's a big learning curve for me still. Like, you know, there's times when, you know, his job is completely different from what I do. So he might have a more stressful day, a more tiring, taxing day than I had. And then I get there and I almost have to remind myself, like, remember, you might have to give more right now. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing. Maybe you've had to give more this whole week. That's okay too, because he does the same for you when you're not there to give more and you need him a little bit more. You know, it's like you have to remember that you're never going to be 100% on both ends, and sometimes it might be 50-50. Sometimes it might be 70-30. Like you have to think of it in numbers like that, because then you don't get let down as much, and you have, you know, you just are a better partner to the person because you understand that and you respect that. And you're okay when like they've had a bad day at work or a long week, they're tired, they just don't have it in them. That's okay. They are human, and I don't have the greatest days every day, so I can't expect them to either.
I think what that says about relationships, I'm just having so many realizations as you talk, Kateri, because it's like all clicking within my mind. And what that tells me is like it's really important to be self-aware within relationships, aware of your own actions, and like you need to be able to remove yourself from the situation and really look at the broader image, because I feel like it's the inherent nature within us to be selfish in a relationship and be like, how is that okay? Like, but him not buying flowers, like that affected me negatively. That's like the human in us. Like I don't expect you not to be able to think that way. However, being able to step back and be like, you know what, like I've been carrying the weight for a while, and like instead of getting pissed off, stepping back and realizing like, okay, I've had to do that for a bit. He carried it last week. Like he's just having a bad week. Instead of being so quick to be like, oh, like he's not communicating with me. Like I'm so pissed off, and being petty and not talking to him for the week. I feel like it can go one of two ways, and it's either like you're self-aware and take a second to reflect on your own actions and how you can improve and make the situation better, or you make assumptions and ruin it for yourself. I don't know.
And you ruin it for the both of you, because then you are like, well, if he's not giving, I'm not going to give. And it's like, what kind of petty game is that? Like it can't, you're never going to work if that's how you think of it. And
honestly, I worry about that. I'm like worried about that for me, because I could see myself being, not see myself, but being that selfish. Like, yeah, I'm going to admit I probably would be selfish in a relationship where if it is a new relationship, it would be my first thought that like, oh, he's not giving that energy because he doesn't care, or like, and it would piss me off. And then I would be like, okay, well, I'm not going to like break my own heart. I'm going to put my guard up and make sure I protect myself. Like I know who I am. I'm like, wait, I would so do that.
And that's why in the scary beginning, the communication is really important, because maybe you're not in a fully established place or a committed place to be like, okay, I know he can only give 20%, so I'm going to give 80, right? Like maybe you're not at that phase yet, but almost being able to communicate, like, when you do feel like that, like, okay, this had me feeling this type of way because we aren't fully committed. I need a little bit more reassurance from you, just so I know, like, in the future, if this happens, like, I'm okay giving more and not putting my guard up because I know where you stand almost. So that's, once again, like, where communication comes in. I feel like any advice I've ever given you, Isabelle, like, over the past 3 years, whether it's romantic or just friendship advice, relationship advice, I'm always like, just communicate it. Like, nip it in the butt, communicate with your roommate, communicate with your friends, your teachers. Like, it's all about communicating when you feel that. Last thing I want to go off of with expectations, which is kind of like a different route, and I won't harp on it too much, but like I said, everyone is a different person and you kind of have to learn that, and sometimes you learn it the hard way, but that can also lead, expectations and also learning about someone else and how they're different from you can kind of be a letdown sometimes. I feel like it's easy to get disappointed because you hold your significant other to a higher standard than you hold anyone else. I don't know what it is, but like, the things I expect of him are way higher than what I would expect of anyone else around me because that's my person. However, that being said, when you hold them up that high, I'm not saying you shouldn't. Like, I've made it very clear that, like, I'm going to hold you higher than anyone else and I'm going to expect more, and I'm going to tell you when you didn't meet those standards out of love and respect for you and our relationship. But there are going to be moments when you feel a little disappointed by their actions, or you feel a little disappointed about, like, the choice they made. And it's normal to feel that, I think. I think sometimes people get scared of, like, oh, they disappointed me, I don't want to tell anyone because I'm embarrassed. And if he disappointed me, does that mean, like, giant red flag? And it doesn't need to be like a giant red flag, because there's probably times when I have disappointed him and maybe I didn't, like, show up the way he thought, but that comes back to expectations and then communicating. So if there is a time where I'm like, I felt let down or was almost like embarrassed or disappointed, I will try to immediately communicate that to him. Maybe, like, not in that night, especially, like, you know, we're at a young age. If there's alcohol involved, like, I'll try and save it for the next day, because no conversation with alcohol involved is going to be solved great. So, like, I'll leave it for the next day and just being like, listen, I set up an expectation, but this is where I feel like you let me down. Don't do that again, almost. Like, if you don't, like, if the actions don't match the next time, like, then maybe you have a bigger problem. But when you start to learn someone, there's going to be moments when you're disappointed because it's the first time something happens. So it's important to communicate, like, okay, that didn't make me feel good and I didn't really like that, so the next time it can change. But I don't want people to get freaked out, like, if you do feel disappointed sometimes, because that comes from you setting expectations, and once again, it removes that joy and the peace that you can have in the relationship. So if you don't communicate how you're feeling, nothing will change.
Yeah, and it doesn't, what I'm taking away from that is, like, I feel I would be that person that would think it's a big red flag at first, is like, oh, like, he behaved this way when we were out. Like, I would never be with someone who behaved like that. Like, red flag, can't pursue this relationship. That's, I already know that's where my mind would go. I feel like hearing that just makes it make sense, where, like, just because they behave one way, like, they may not know that you don't like that behavior, or that they need to change. And everyone says, like, you can't change another person, but I believe that a relationship, you really do grow together, and you are supposed to make each other better. So you may be improving them in some areas that, like, they needed work on. So you can't take those as red flags, because it's just opportunity for growth within them. And I feel like that's great to know.
And I feel like there's certain things that are obvious red flags. Like, if they're out talking to a bunch of other girls while you're standing there and not concerned about you, like, okay, maybe that's another red flag. But, like, you know, you can be disappointed in how he acted, and also it can be a red flag as well.
So it's really, like, case by case situation, and just being aware of your own self and aware of the situation, and that they are different people, and, like, really reflecting, like, reflect on every aspect of the situation, and then decide with how you want to move forward. I feel like that's what I'm thinking about.
And quickly, I'll note, if there's ever anything that I bring up in terms of, like, okay, maybe I didn't like how you acted last night, I always do self-reflection and admit to my own faults in those situations as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I really don't try and only pin it on him, or if it's in another relationship, someone else. Like, I really try and bring it back of like, okay, maybe in that moment I could have done something differently too.
Yeah.
And I explained that to him as well. Like, I didn't do this well, and I recognize that, and I see my part in this problem as well. It's not all on you. It's not all on me. It's us in this together. And those are my thoughts. So I feel like if you are able to look inward and see where you could have improved too, even if it's in like the smallest way, and it mainly was that person, and it's not really your fault, but you were mad about it, like, just try and look a little inward, try and put yourself in their shoes and see their side. That comes with like the patience and understanding of like being able to see two ends of the spectrum, seeing where they are, because you have to be able to kind of like play both roles a little bit in order to be like that patient and understanding person. And I feel like that's really important in a relationship. Like, you have to be understanding, because if you're not, you're constantly going to be feeling like, oh, it's my way or the highway. And really, like, what relationship is going to work with that mindset? None. I literally don't know one relationship that works on that high ground at all.
So wise, sis. So wise. I love ending
Thanks.
on that note.
I feel like I'm just like blah, 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 blah.
But you have had, like, you truly have had 3 years of experience, and you've had 3 years of learning all of these different things. And that's why I think we really wanted to have this episode, is someone may be in a 1-year relationship right now, experiencing some of these thoughts and like needing a future person to tell you like, it's okay. Like, it's okay that you're thinking that way.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes we all need that comfort that other people are thinking those things too, or other people are struggling with that as well. We're all going through relationships. You all have to kind of learn the general idea of it, which is what I feel like you touched on. So great episode. Love this convo.
Tyler, thanks for letting me put us on blast.
Yes, Tyler, thank you.
I'm not even gonna tell him this episode's gonna come out.
No,
he's gonna be like, what the heck?
We did not review it with him before this.
No, I will say, like, on that note too, though, everything that we've ever had a disagreement on, anything that we've ever argued about, fought about, like, been mad at each other for, I'm so grateful for each and everything. Truly so grateful, because we've only grown stronger, got better at communicating. Every little thing has led us to our connection now, and like the comfortability that we have with each other, the trust, the level of honesty and trust that we inherently have with each other is because every little thing that led us to where we are now. Like, it truly is all the little arguments, everything, the open honesty. I can trust him with my full heart because he was able to come to me with concerns or worries or anything, honestly and openly. So I'm like, I know in any situation I can trust him and he'll be honest with me.
Yeah. That's the relationship right there. Like, yes, it's all the love, but it's also that stuff as well. That's what makes such a great relationship.
And like, we're constantly learning and growing, and in no way, shape, or form are we perfect, and I don't expect us to be, but that's what makes it perfect in my mind, of like the imperfectness of it. And it might not be perfect for Isabelle. If she were in this relationship, maybe she'd be like, this isn't for me. But in my life, in how I feel, it's like, it's right for me, right? And that's what you also have to remember, is it's not going to be right for everyone else, and that's okay, because it's not supposed to be. If it were, then like, you wouldn't be in a committed relationship with one person.
Exactly.
Like, not everyone is for everyone, and that's all right. And, you know, keep your relationship as an individual to you and your significant other. You don't need to expect other people to understand everything about it.
Yeah, because they won't. And that's okay.
Only
not meant to.
Only you know the little conversations, the little things that you do, the laughs, the songs, the singing. Only you know that stuff, and that's really sacred. That's the best part about relationships, are those moments, not the ones you put up on Instagram.
Exactly. I love
Let's end this before I keep going.
Yeah. So thank you, sis, for sharing all of that wise information and just sharing a lot about your relationship. I know it's kind of hard to open up on the struggles and be so transparent about it, but I know I appreciate it, and I know I appreciate it, and I know our entire audience will. It's very comforting to hear someone so wise and also so experienced speak on this. So thank you. Yeah. And in regards to, go ahead. You have something to say?
No. I was gonna say, like, you can call me relationship expert Kateri. Call me up, hit me up on my hotline when you need me. Call me, beat me if you want to reach me.
second pod coming out soon. For relationship advice,
Imagine.
that would be like 5 episodes in. You'd be like, what the fuck do I talk about? All right, guys, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, follow, comment, interact with us. Please share this podcast with someone who needs to hear it or who may need some advice on their dating. Share this podcast in general. We are trying to grow, and we can do that with the help of you guys. So thank you for your continued support, but please continue supporting us. We love you. You love us. Let's all have a great week.
Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.